I kind of wanted to jump right in by saying, I know we're kind of getting to the end or kind of wrapping up legislative sessions in a lot of different places, and South Carolina has done a lot of really interesting work within this recent legislation focused on teachers. So what are you most excited about that you're seeing, and how do those build on the larger vision you have for teachers in South Carolina?
Well, we know that a great teacher in the classroom is the #1 in-school predictor of great student achievement. And so we in South Carolina want to create a state where we have the best place to teach in the entire country. We want teachers to look at South Carolina and say, I want to go there and be a professional in their classroom. So this legislative session, we have seen really exciting advancement in continuing to increase our beginning teacher pay. Since 2018, 2019, we have increased our starting teacher pay from $32,000 to this next year, $48,500. That's a 52% increase and well in line with the Southeastern average. So we know we have more to do, but we want to make teaching an attractive profession, especially in those early years when, let's be honest, it's tough. You're getting your feet under you, you're learning your classroom management, you're getting acclimated to what it means to be in the workforce for the first time, potentially. So we want to take care of those early teachers, but we're also looking at ways to continue to support our mid-career and our advanced career teachers. So looking at things like paid parental leave, respecting their time and acknowledging the fact that, they have families too, just like the rest of us. And teachers give so much of themselves to take care of other people. We have to look at ways that we can help take care of them. So that's one way. Unencumbered time is another policy that we've passed. We're looking at strategic compensation pilots that will allow us to keep our most effective teachers in our classrooms of greatest need. So there are so many different policies that we are advancing here. I would really say that in South Carolina, we're taking an all of the above strategy.
You brought up teacher pay, which that's a huge kind of investment, and that's great to see. This is something we're seeing kind of in a lot of different areas. A lot of states are thinking about strategic pay, but you mentioned you did it in that starting salary, but you're also doing these compensation pilot grants. And so I'm really curious to know kind of, why did you focus on both strategies, and how do they work together? And then if you could just highlight a little bit more about what the kind of pilot grants are.
Well, we know that we have to bring strong teachers into the profession, but we have to retain them once they're there. And I think a lot of times teachers, unfortunately, see that their only real path for career progression and advancement is to go out of the classroom into some kind of administrative role or coaching role. And that's right for some teachers, but we know that there are great teachers who would love to stay in the classroom if they felt like they could advance their career. And so that's really what this strategic compensation is all about. It's all about starting with the end in mind, which is, why are we in education in the first place? It is to advance student achievement and outcomes. And so when we have rock star teachers that are putting in the hard work every day that it takes to move the needle for students, those teachers deserve to be recognized and rewarded for that. And ultimately, we hope that that serves as a magnet into our classrooms of greatest need. So whether that is a special needs classroom where students may be struggling with various learning disabilities, or perhaps in our rural schools where it's hard to attract and retain great teachers, just because, it's not quite as much going on maybe as in one of our cities, or in a Title I school where there are real challenges associated with poverty. We want to have our very most talented teachers say, we're going to raise our hand because we know that we're going to be rewarded and recognized for going into those areas of greatest need.
You've also mentioned something else for your mid-career teachers you've kind of focused on, which is that kind of paid parental leave. And South Carolina, you guys took kind of an early adopter in kind of taking this approach. Why did you and kind of Governor McMaster choose to invest in this policy, and kind of when you went about it, what benefits did you predict, and kind of how have you seen those actualized?
Yeah, well, I think ultimately policies like this are about respect and dignity. I think that we have got to really acknowledge our teachers as the hardworking professionals that they are. We ask our teachers to do everything for everybody. And by the time they finish doing that, they often have burned out because they have not taken care of themselves and their own families. And so we recognize that we want to create a sustainable, dignified lifestyle for teachers here in South Carolina. And so paid parental leave is one way to acknowledge that, when you're a teacher, there is so much more that goes into that than the time you spend in the classroom from first thing in the morning until you leave after the bell rings. I mean, you're working evenings and weekends, and your family is really part of this whole journey. And so giving our teachers the acknowledgement and the space to be able to take care of their own families when they have needs, I think is just a no-brainer. And so we've seen, especially those mid-career teachers who maybe have started a family, may have multiple children, or even some of the teachers who are maybe more advanced in their career and have an aging parent who they need to help out, by taking them to a medical appointment or something like that, where, they want to give back to the person who has invested so much in them. We're seeing that this is really an opportunity that our teachers are cherishing, and it's something that I would strongly encourage other states to look at.
What would you say to other states that are kind of thinking about this? So what insights have you learned that you'd maybe share to get other states to kind of think about this policy?
Well, I would just say that with this policy and all of the other ones that we've talked about too, it is something that just requires intention. I would not say that any of these policies are super heavy lifts. It just requires you to put first things first. And ultimately here in the education profession, this is not just about books and buildings and buses. This is about people. And I think if you talk to any employer who is worth their salt, they would tell you that the number one thing that you have to do is take care of your people. And so to me, it really is just a matter of putting first things first and making people your priority. And in this case, the people are our teachers. Recently,
convened a task force of teachers and principals and district superintendents. So continuing to listen to kind of your teachers and educators' voice. And this task force was all designed to kind of look at South Carolina teacher workforce challenges and design really great research, but also evidence-based recommendations. And so what motivated you to kind of make this task force, and what results are you seeing kind of after completing the task force?
Well, we all hear in the headlines across the country how we're facing a teacher shortage, and that's not unique to South Carolina. I think that's happening everywhere. And so we knew that we needed to step up and take real action if we were going to build a sustainable teacher pipeline for the future. And so about 3 years ago, just as I was coming into office, the General Assembly convened a task force that was kind of a big public meeting structure with a lot of different people from all over the state. And they came away with, 60, 80, 90, 200. I mean, it was a lot of recommendations, right? It felt like a lot of recommendations, and they all had, interest and merit, but you really have to have, I think, a much more focused and coherent strategy. And so what we did was we built on the starting point of that task force that the General Assembly convened. We worked with you as a great partner at ExcelinEd and brought together a small group of teachers and principals and superintendents. And we didn't do this in the public eye. We sat around a conference room table and I think we had 5 or 6 different meetings where we went really deep into what is working here in South Carolina, what is working in other states, and then how do we take some of these recommendations and really focus them into a roadmap that we can implement with the General Assembly. And I'm excited to share that we actually had several of those recommendations that have already become law as of the end of this legislative session, and we're teed up to advance more ideas next legislative session. So One of the ideas that you all recommended along with us was that we need to really take a close look at how our education preparation programs are actually equipping teachers to be ready to go into the classroom. And so part of that is creating an EPP report card. And so that report card is now going to be housed here at the Department of Education, which was one of the recommendations that the task force came up with. We passed the Educator Assistance Act, which is really about giving teachers more voice and choice in terms of their professional decisions, their contract requirements, respecting their time around professional development, making the certification process easier. So it's really about respecting teacher time. And then we also are now in South Carolina positioned to give career changers actual credit for real work-based experience when they decide to come into the classroom. So those are just a handful of the ideas that START recommended, our START task force recommended, that are now well on the way to really helping us continue to build out our teacher pipeline here.
Well, kind of final question is kind of, how do you keep building on the success of all of these initiatives? Kind of what are you looking forward to in South Carolina with teachers?
Well, we still have more items to check off from our START report. So that's where we're going to dig in next legislative session. I think one of the really big and exciting ideas that we talked about was career ladders. How do we create additional pathways for teachers to opt into mentoring other teachers and being recognized for their expertise and their experience? So this is something that we're really excited to talk with the General Assembly this next year about piloting here in South Carolina, because I think this is a really practical and essential way for us to continue to professionalize the teaching profession. And I think ultimately that's where we're headed in South Carolina, is we want our state to be a place where teachers are elevated, celebrated, and recognized for being the incredibly dedicated professionals that they are. And I think we've made great strides towards that, but we know that we can't rest on our laurels and there's always more to do.